Carolina has added 4 players in the transfer portal already, but the question now, are they done?
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. I hope you got your taxes in. I had to file an extension. Whoops! Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks so much for making this your first listen or watch of the day. And I want to remind you, you can catch every one of these episodes ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and of course, the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. You guys, one of my favorite Tar Heel people on the entire planet, joining today, Mr. Josh Marlow. You can find him at HTB_Josh on the Twitter machine. I still can't bring myself to call it X. Half of the Heel Tough blog, producer extraordinaire, my buddy and yours. Josh, welcome in. Congrats to the Mets for not sucking, because my Braves do suck.
Isaac, it's good to be back. What's funny is I was just thinking the other day, man, I haven't heard from my guy in a while, but I know I've been busy, which means you've been busy. Transfer portal, March Madness, spring practice, all that stuff. But it's good to be back. Excited to talk some Carolina basketball with you. And yes, it's early, but the Mets have not been a disappointment. While it's been fun seeing the Braves at the bottom of the NL East the first 2.5 weeks of this baseball season.
We have yet to win back-to-back baseball games. I'm like laughing. It's so sad. So congrats to you. Just enjoy kicking me while I'm down. It's great. Yes, we were just talking before we got going, Josh and I and Anthony Pagnato. We haven't been in a good rhythm of talking together Tar Heels regularly, and we need to get to it. Also, some sad football news. We are going to be talking basketball side of things today, portal, shape of the roster, all of that. Unfortunately, like literally right before we hopped on, we got the news that Bo Atkinson is jumping in the transfer portal. Josh, this is bad news for the fighting Bill Belichick. So we'll see what's next in that here in the coming days. But where we're going to head today, you guys, we're going to talk about the state of Carolina's roster. Do we think they will add more in the portal? A little tweak on that. Do we think they should add more in the portal? Because those might be different answers. What is the biggest hole in the roster currently? If Carolina does add more, who would it be or what position? And then the other thing, I've been having a lot of people asking me, who's the dude? If you need a bucket right now, who's RJ Davis? Who's Tyler Hansbrough? Who do we give the ball to? And then the last question Josh and I are going to unpack. If we had to call it today, is Drake Powell a Tar Heel in 25-26? I can't wait for that conversation. But Marlo, let's start here. I just want to get, you and I haven't really talked about the shape of the roster coming off of last season's turbulence. You lose a couple guys out in income, these 4 different transfer portal guys. Just big picture it for me. Where are you at on the shape of North Carolina's roster? State of the Union address, my man. Take it away.
I've been really impressed, Isaac, with what Hubert Davis, Jim Tanner, this staff, this front office has done this offseason. You go back to Hubert Davis's end-of-season radio show, and he said, we're going to add size and we're going to add shooting in the portal. And they've done both. Primarily in the size, you're bringing in a 7-foot big man from Arizona, the 6'11" guy from Alabama. I would love to, and I'll give a hint that I would love to see another shooter come in. But you did add shooting with what Jonathan Powell, I think, will be bringing to this roster. I think Kyan Evans is going to be a lights out shooter for Carolina as well. And so I've been really impressed because you didn't quite know how this was going to work with the front office being put together. We were confident that there would be cohesion because of the relationship that Jim Tanner, Hubert Davis had, but you still got to see that play out. We still don't know financially where Carolina is. We've been told there's been a greater financial commitment, but we don't know exactly what that number, what that figure looks like. Of course, we're still waiting on the House settlement to become official. And I do think Carolina will be a school that will set aside $4-6 million of that $20 million in revenue they get to pay their players for the basketball program. So with that being said, though, I think this roster is in as good a shape as it could have been, all things considered, with you losing your second all-time leading scorer, with you losing 2 5-star prospects in the portal, and Elliott Cadeau, Ian Jackson, both guys that I do think that it was kind of beneficial for them to exit the program. As hard as that it was, maybe was to admit at the time. So I look at this roster top to bottom. I see legitimate size. I see legitimate depth. And that's something that they did not have a year ago. For being honest, they have not had from top to bottom in all 4 of Hubert Davis's years. So I think if you're a Carolina fan, it's okay to be excited about the potential of this roster. Now it's on that coaching staff, putting the guys in the right pieces to be successful.
I think that's a great way to say it, Marlowe, because it's like, on paper, man, this does seem like the most, I'll at least say the most well-rounded team, the most versatile team, the team with the most depth that we've seen. But I think your point is well taken. Until we see how it fits together, we won't truly know how all the jigsaw pieces go together. I like your point there about both Cadeau and Jackson. I think there is like a Caleb Love element to it of it's probably just better for both parties. And I think that Elliott will do well at Michigan. Ian is going to do wherever he lands up. Obviously, we don't know that right now as we record, but obviously best wishes to both of those guys as they head out. And man, really curious to see what that is and what it looks like. So Marlowe, I want to ask both of us. I want both of us to answer these 2 questions with a slight nuance. Do we think that Carolina will add more in the transfer portal? Obviously, we'll get to the Drake Powell of it all later, but just let's say as the roster is right now with Drake Powell on it, do we think Carolina will add more? And then we'll come back around behind that and ask, do we think Carolina should add more? And so we'll, like, as much as you can nuance those 2 things out.
I think today, I think they're done. Barring there being another significant backcourt player to go portaling, which is still on the table.
Absolutely.
As we saw with DeMarco Dunn a few years ago, there will be guys that will transfer as late as possible. So as we sit here tonight, I do think Carolina is done. They do have 3 scholarships available. We've got to get, I think, at some point an answer on Jae'lyn High. I've been told that the expectations for him to be back. And that he'll be
for me, by the way. Yeah.
He'll be a part of this roster, which then takes Carolina to 13 scholarships, which is where you've been in the past, where you normally operate. And so that would not be a surprise to me. So I think as of right now, Hubert Davis, Jim Tanner, they're done. You brought in 4 transfers. It's a strong transfer portal class. You're adding 3 freshmen. You've got some guys of significance coming back. So barring a surprise portal entry like a Vin Allen Lubin, who is still not yet to officially announce his return for 2025-2026, I do think Carolina is done adding out of the portal for this offseason.
Man, that's a great point. We all, I think it's easy for us to assume that Vin Allen is back, that he will play. In my opinion, I think he's going to be a great backup center to Vesar. I think that's my assumption. Are you thinking the same about the 5 position, Marlowe, or would you go the other way, Vin Allen and then Vesar?
I think Vesar is obviously, you would want him to start just because, I mean, you put a 7-footer in your lineup, you're not going to complain about that. Also, I think, and look, Vin Allen Lubin, I thought the last 10 games was the Vin Allen Lubin that we thought we were getting from day one. I'm really open-minded, and I would love to see where the coaching staff is. You go back to the Final Four, Schade. You watch 3 of the 4 teams play with 2 bigs. So I would like to see Hubert Davis, if that's the best 5, be open to that. But if Vin Allen Lubin's coming off your bench, that's a good thing. And I've stressed that this offseason that if he's a bench player, that's not an indictment on him. That's more of a compliment to Vesar and to just the depth that's going to exist in the front court. And you need that to navigate the non-conference schedule Carolina's going to play, the 20-game conference gauntlet you're going to play in the ACC, which I do think is going to be much improved after this the season that they just came off of. And if you want to play deep into March, man, you got to have depth. And so if Ben Allen Lubin returns and is coming off your bench, I think that's a win for Carolina in more ways than one.
That's well said, brother. I'm with you. I think Carolina is done pending any other big portal entries out or anybody that just hops in that it's like a no-brainer. You can't not go after this dude, right? And then let me ask you the other question, changing the will to should. Do you think Carolina should bring in anyone else?
Yes. I love Kyan Evans. I love Jonathan Powell. I think those guys can shoot 38% from behind the 3-point line. With that being said, I want one more. Like, I would love, I don't know. The Nick Dorn stuff's got pretty quiet considering his campus visit has came and went. You still just never know. He could be waiting on Carolina. He could be feeling out other things. If they could add another shooter, I would explore that to the fullest extent. And so I think that they should add one more shooter to the roster just to take the load off the freshmen. I do think that the freshmen are going to be good, but I think they are, RJ Davis type of guys where they're 3 to 4 year players. This first year for them is going to be a lot about just transitioning to college, transitioning to Carolina, getting acclimated to the way UNC does things. If you don't want to expect too much out of them. So I would love for them to add one more player. I think they should, but I don't see that happening unless, Drake Powell decides to go pro or you see a Ben Allen Lubin or someone else decide to transfer here at the last minute.
I'm right with you on that one as well. It seems to me like it's tough because Coach Davis hasn't shown a proclivity for playing a lot of dudes. He had his highest bench percentage usage last year at 30%, which blew me away that was the number based on what we've seen the first 3 years. But that said, like it's tough to see them using it, but the shooting, man, I think you just can't have enough. As you said, I would love to take some pressure off of Derek Dixon to have to perform at a high level. I think he can. Will he? We don't know because we haven't seen it yet. And so I'm with you that I think it's the way to go. Guys, as we get ready to keep rolling here, one of the things I want to say is hearing Marlow, who I know has no problem critiquing if things should be critiqued, or no problem saying, like, I don't think this is a good roster. To hear you say, like, you feel good about this and where the depth is, that warms my heart and makes me happy, and look forward to that. All right, gang. Well, we got to keep talking. We want to look ahead at this thing. What is the biggest hole on the roster currently? Is it that shooting we just talked about? Is it in another area, point guard play perhaps? Where does that land? We're going to have that conversation and more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy. So whether it's picking my favorite team, diving into player props, whatever it is, man, you can get there. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, even after the game tips off, you can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win even bigger. As we look ahead at the college basketball season for 25-26, FanDuel already has their national championship odds out. Carolina is at plus 4,000 right now. That sounds steep, but it's up from where it was at plus 5,000. So FanDuel sees that we're getting better as well. Unfortunately, Duke leads the way right now at plus 1,000, followed by Purdue and Houston both at plus 1,200 to win the Natty in 26. So don't mess out. Head on over right now at FanDuel.com to claim your shot at $250 in bonus bets. Check it out at FanDuel.com. I want to continue thinking ahead to Carolina's roster for the 2025-26 season. Isaac Schade, joined by our guy Josh Marlow from Heel Tough Blog. And where we're going next is looking at, Josh and I just both talked about, we think Carolina perhaps should add more shooting. Josh, I want to ask you a similar question that might honestly have the same answer, but it might be nuanced or different. As you look at the scope of this roster, the depth chart at all the positions, where do you see the biggest hole on the roster? If you're looking ahead to February and Carolina's sitting at 6th in the ACC, why is that?
I think right now that answer for me is who is that second perimeter scorer going to be in the backcourt? I love that Seth Trimble is back. I thought that was a big get for Hubert Davis culture-wise,
Yeah,
because I think there was leadership that was shown the back half of the year. You go to that Clemson game up until the loss to Ole Miss, you saw a different version of Seth Trimble with the
that's
guy
right.
that was vocally holding guys accountable. And I do think with the graduation of R.J. Davis, he'll be a lot more vocal on and off the court, which is something Carolina lacked this past season. But I don't know, is he gonna shoot the ball better? I don't know that. I love what he brings to the table. I love his energy. I love that he gets in the stance and he guards and he fights through screens and he rebounds really well for his size. But he hasn't been the most efficient scorer for the majority of his career. Maybe a larger role. Maybe we know that there's potential there. What he did against Memphis, yes, in an exhibition, you don't do that unless that's in your bag. So he's capable of being an explosive scorer. Is he going to be a consistent scorer? I don't know, which is why I stress the desire to add another scorer in the backcourt. So for me, I think that's the biggest hole on the roster right now because I think your front court is talented, it's deep, it's versatile. Caleb Wilson's a tweener that can switch in between the 3 and the 4. So even if you lose Drake Powell, I still feel okay really there. So that answer might surprise people because how much I voiced my desire for Seth Trimble to come back and celebrated it. But for me right now, it's just wondering, are you going to get consistent production from that number 2 shooting guard spot? That would be the biggest hole in this roster for me as we sit here in mid-April.
You know what's funny, Josh, is my answer is similar, but for a different reason. Like for a while, like I had been saying, if Elliot Cadeau stays, you simply cannot start Elliot and Seth together in the back. There's just not enough shooting from that. I
Yep.
think for me, Kyan Evans, part of what I'm so excited about with him is because of his capability as a shooter. I think it makes it feasible for Seth to start at the 2. You might have to look more at Jonathan Powell or something like that. But I do think because of Kyan's capability beyond the arc, it makes Seth viable as the starting 2 guard. I think my question in terms of like the potential biggest hole is just point guard. Because after Kyan Evans, I like Seth Trimble as a guard, but just in 2 or 3 minute spurts, because I think when he has to focus there, to me, it feels like that takes away so much of the special sauce at what makes him, both offensively and defensively, right? Like I want him to be able to get out and transition. I want him, as you said, to just be able to get down in a stance. And I'm not saying the point guard can't do that, but I want him to be like just able to focus on that above and beyond other things. So I would love to see more point guard capability. Maybe, there's some of that in Derek Dixon. I know he's been working on that as he comes in. But it's just like I would love a Nate Britt type guy, right? Like backing up kind of. I feel like that for me is a potential hole. What do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you're wrong. I do think that we got to view the point guard spot a little bit differently under Hubert Davis than we did under Roy Williams. I
I like it.
think I think Hubert Davis wants a scoring point guard. I think he wants a guy that can create offense for himself. That was what we got sold on when he took over. And, he had to blend the backcourt of R.J. Davis and Caleb Love. And it took a while in his first year, but when it came together, you saw how those 2 guards could really play well and play well at a high level. Elliot Cadeau in his freshman season didn't have to facilitate because the roster was so well constructed around him to where he just had to make sure he got RJ the ball in his spots, same for Cormac, HI, and then Baycott on the low post. This past year didn't have the same benefits. And all of a sudden you needed scoring from there. You needed shooting from there. And it wasn't there. And I think Kyan Evans will be able to fill that void. But you do need to have someone that can come in and at critical times make sure Carolina gets into its sets. They're running half court offense. And so whether that's Seth Trimble, whether that's Derek Dixon, I don't know who that guy is going to be right now. But you do need that guy to emerge, preferably over the summer. That way, when you tip the season off in October, you're kind of running off as a well-oiled machine and not trying to figure out as many things as Carolina felt like this past year. They were trying to answer too many questions with too difficult of a non-conference schedule. The schedule is not as tough next year, and I understand that, but you want to have more answers than questions when you tip off, in November. And I do think there's enough pieces on the roster where if they really put these guys in the best position possible, that's not asking too much for this coaching staff.
And I think that's part of the benefit of getting these commitments earlier than they did last offseason. Literally on yesterday's show, I was talking about Cade Tyson. The first commitment from the portal last year wasn't until April 28th, which is like 2 weeks from now still. And Carolina's basically done as we sit here now, which is kind of crazy, Marlowe. And so I think you're right with so much of that. And we got to recognize that for almost every team across the country, it is harder to build that chemistry to figure it out fully until maybe early January or something. But because of the talent that's on this roster, because of the depth you were talking about, I think it does make it easier to win games even before that chemistry really truly finds itself. And so that's going to be exciting to watch. Now, we've got a couple more conversations to have. Who is the dude for Carolina? RJ's out the door. There's, now you're in a pickle. You're down one with 10 seconds to go. Who's getting the ball? Who's that guy? That's the conversation we're going to have next, as well as, is Drake Powell going to be on that roster when we're talking about it? We'll have those conversations in just a second. It seems like there's a lot of people looking at this roster and really liking the construction of it, the different players, the versatility, the possibilities, the different lineup types. But a lot of people have looked at it and said, I don't know who's the guy. Who gets the ball in crunch time? Who are we calling on? There's not an obvious RJ Davis to it. There's not an obvious, whoever that guy has been, like Ty Lawson, just like a blur downhill getting to the bucket. Marlowe, in crunch time, who do you think that guy is? Or is it a combination of multiple people, perhaps?
I think the fans are going to want it to be 5-star incoming freshman Caleb Wilson. And I do think he is not shying away from that. I don't know if we've had a recruit that has talked so much about expectation as much as he has, where you have fans tweeting at him, hey, we need you. Don't be a bust. And he has said that I'm not going to disappoint. There was a comment where he said, it's my job to be ready when I show up in the summer. It's not their job to get me ready. So I think mentally he's preparing for that. And if he wants to be that guy, I'm here for it. To me, I think that answer is going to be Kyan Evans. There is so much that I like about what I've seen. And I've just done, of course, watched him in the tournament. So going off of watching those games. But you go back and look at his last 14 games when he got moved to that starting point guard position.
That's right. And
you look at how well he played, how well Colorado State played. It's not a coincidence. And those shooting numbers, he's an analytic, the analytic nerds will love him. He's everything they want in terms of the way he shoots the ball, how efficient he shoots the ball and all that. He's a guy that I'm going to go back and really maybe go game by game and just watch and get a better feel for this offseason. I see stardom written all over him. I know some people are worried about him coming from Colorado State, coming from the Mountain West. That's a power conference program in a mid-major conference. Nico Medved's one of the best coaches in the country.
Now at a power conference school. Yeah.
Yep. He's now in Minnesota, and I bet you he'd love to have Kyan Evans there with them. So I don't want to put too much weight on his shoulders. But, I mean, there was not a shot too big for him the last 2 months of the year. When Colorado State was winning itself into the tournament, they were a buzzer beater away from going to the second weekend. So I know it's a different world where we're looking for transfers maybe to come in and be the guy. But I think that's what's going to be the case for Carolina and Kyan Evans, because I think you're looking at a guy that's going to average 15 points a game or more, that's going to shoot 38% or better from behind the three-point line, and is going to be everything and more for Hubert Davis in this backcourt as they look to rebound from a disappointing season.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people look at that Colorado State lineup and think like, well, it was all Neat Clifford, right? And it's like, no. Like, yes, he's phenomenal, but it was both of them. Like, it was a team effort from the Rams, and it's not like Neat Clifford could not have done everything Colorado State did all by himself, because they, as you said, man, what a phenomenal stretch run they had to just like kind of overtake the Mountain West and to like. If you look at Ken Palm, gang, let's remember here, the ACC was dead last in conference rankings of the Power Five. The conference right behind them was the Mountain West. And the ACC and the Mountain West were closer together than the ACC and Big East or whomever was the furthest back of the other Power Five conferences. So let's not get all high and mighty about, the Mountain West, because we're right there with them basically last year. And so I got no issues with that. I'm right with you. If he wasn't in Chapel Hill, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was a Golden Gopher following Nico Medved up there. For what it's worth, that's my answer too, Josh. I think he's the guy, and he can do so much of it. I know people are concerned about like, well, he's not the assist man that Elliott is. Well, that's not his game, and it doesn't have to be. There's other ways that we can win. And I know we look at that and drool because we all think, oh man, Kendall Marshall 2.0, what could have been? It's just a different way to attack it and do it. Now, one of the things that could really help attacking and doing it is if Drake Powell is back in the starting lineup for Carolina next year at the 3 spot. Josh, put you on the spot. I'll do the same. I'll answer it as well. If you had to answer it for today, Wednesday, April 16th, is Drake Powell a Tar Heel in 2025-26, or is he off pursuing professional opportunities, or maybe transferred somewhere else, which we don't think will happen, but you never know.
Yeah, call me naive. I think Drake Powell is going to be back for next season. I put a lot of value in a guy that grew up 30 minutes away, that grew up wanting to be a Tar Heel, enduring a up and down season individually and collectively, and that not being his legacy. I think this is where NIL helps you, because you can now compensate him to be back next year. And where he's projected to go into the draft, you could probably get close to that, if not meet that number, for at least 1 year for him to come on back to school. You add Jaron Stevenson, who he has a relationship with. I think that's a big reason why Carolina got involved with him to begin with, outside of all the physical attributes he's going to bring to Carolina. So I think Drake Powell is going to be back. And this might be a hot take. If he returns for next season, I think you look at that roster on paper, it's the best roster Hubert Davis has been given, top to bottom, in his brief tenure as Carolina's head coach. I don't want to put the burden of him making a Final Four, winning a conference regular season title, being a 1 seed. But I do think, even with some of the issues that would exist in the backcourt that we talked about earlier, I do think top to bottom, that would be the best roster he has assembled. And it would really be a credit to Jim Tanner and the program's awakening to realize they got to bring in a guy like a Jim Tanner to help Hubert Davis put together this caliber of roster, which we expect to have year in, year out. So I think Drake Powell is going to be back. And I think if he returns, I think Carolina probably vaults into that preseason top 3 of the ACC conversation. And you're expecting them to not only make the tournament, but earn a respectable seed and field a team that could play into the second weekend.
Man, that's all very well said. All your reasons for Drake Powell to return make a ton of sense to me. It seems like he and his family are taking their time in a very wise way, which I'm sure the staff would love them to hurry up and make a decision, but I'm sure they also understand it, right? Like you want these guys. We talk all the time about, like, we want these young men to make right decisions, and they've got the wrong people talking to them. Well, I feel like Drake Powell is a wise young man who's got a lot of good people around him, including his family. And if he wants to take the time to figure it out, then by golly, I want to allow him that. But part of it that makes it a little easier is because I think that taking his time and making the wise decision ultimately leads him back to Carolina for all the reasons you just laid out, Marlow. And I think puts the Tar Heels in a phenomenal position to compete at a very high level next year. I think the jump that he can take next year with all his versatility puts Carolina in a really good spot there. And so I'm right with you. I won't belabor the point anymore on that. Anything else you want to hit on with Drake Powell, or anything else from the look ahead that we've just done?
I mean, I think I just want to really reiterate the job that Hubert Davis, Jim Tanner has done, and I don't know how it is for your audience. For us, we get a lot of negative fans that come into our mentions and want to argue, and I don't turn those guys away.
No.
But I don't think it's beneficial to spend the offseason being grumpy and being down about where the program is, where the program is going. Roy Williams still believes in Hubert Davis. That's enough for me to still believe in Hubert Davis, a guy that's coaching the Final Four. He's coaching a national championship game. Last time I checked, John Shire hasn't done that. He's won an ACC regular.
He hasn't? That's crazy.
He's won an ACC regular season title. He's been a 1 seed. And, the job they've done this year, I think just reaffirms his commitment, his desire to have Carolina basketball where we expect Carolina basketball to be, which is atop of the ACC and atop the national polls and getting a 1 seed in the tournament and playing deep into March. And so I think they've really positioned themselves very nicely to bounce back in a major way next year. We want long-term stability, and I get that. I want that as much as anybody. But I think this program is in a really good spot, which is not something that was a certainty when the season came to an end. And I just want Carolina fans to be willing to buy in and be excited, because I do think you're going to see the type of basketball you want and expect next season in Chapel Hill.
That's well said. And I love the point about long-term longevity, and that excites me too, with so many of these guys that have come in have multiple years of eligibility remaining. And who knows if they stick around, because it's the transfer portal era, but the hope of that and the possibility of that is all there. Man, it's so great to hang out and talk with Josh Marlow, our guy tonight. Josh, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for the great work you do with Pagnata on Tar Heel, with Heel Tough blog. Man, just so thankful to get to do this alongside of you guys, and appreciate the great work that you do. So, man, I'm thankful for you at both the personal and professional level. Folks, if you don't know Marlow's work and Pagnata's work, please make sure you go check that out at HTB_Josh on the Twitter machine there.
Shade, thank you for the kind words. I consider you a friend, on a professional and a personal level. I love doing this with you. We need to do it more often. I just hope that the next time we talk, the Braves are still in last place and have failed to win back-to-back games during the season. That's my hope and prayer when we get on here in the summer and we're talking Carolina football, basketball, whatever it is, that your Braves are in the dweller while the Mets find themselves atop that NL East.
The problem is it's probably going to be the reality. So June, July, August, whenever it is, I think that might well be the case. Gang, if you have not yet subscribed to the show on YouTube, make sure you do that while you're here. We're grateful for you hopping in with us. If you haven't joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, that link is in the show notes and it's free to join. And if you've not gone deeper with us by joining the Locked On Tar Heels Insider Program, we'd love to have you there. That link is also in the show notes. I want to remind you that it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be right back with you again tomorrow, but until then, peace.